It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon, the kind where birds chirp lazily and the world feels still enough to breathe. But when I heard the panicked barking of our neighbor's dog and the desperate scream of my daughter, I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. My name is Rachel. I'm a single mom raising my beautiful 12-year-old daughter, Leela. She was born with cerebral palsy, brilliant mind, trapped in a body that doesn't always cooperate. But you know what? She's a fighter. And she's my whole world. We moved into this HOA controlled community 6 months ago, thinking it would be safe, quiet, and accessible. I should have known better the moment I met her. The woman the whole neighborhood secretly called HOA Karen. Her real name was Margaret Whitmore, but trust me, she earned the nickname. Mid-50s, shoulder-length blonde hair always sprayed stiff. Lips curled like she was sucking on lemons. She wore purple, always purple. T-shirt, pants, even her damn garden gloves. She had a voice that could cut steel and a heart that seemed just as cold. She made it clear from day one. My daughter's wheelchair ramp was an eyesore. Her therapy tricycle was cluttering the sidewalk. And don't get me started on the time she suggested we relocate somewhere more accommodating. But I never imagined she could be this cruel. That day I came back from a 15-minute grocery run. Just 15 minutes, I stepped out of the car with 2 bags in my arms. That's when I saw the back gate wide open. I froze. The yard was silent. No, Lila, my chest tightened. I dropped the bags and ran toward the backyard, screaming her name. Then I heard a faint, muffled sob, somewhere low. And metallic dot, and there she was. My daughter, my baby girl, was inside a crudely built cage, made from old dog fencing and zip ties, tucked behind a bush next to the neighbor's shed. Her wheelchair was tipped over nearby, one wheel still spinning. Her hands trembled as she clutched the bars. Her face streaked, flushed, terrified. I will never forget the look in her eyes. The cage door had a padlock on it. Someone locked her in. I screamed louder than I ever had in my life. I grabbed the fencing with all my strength and started tearing it apart with my bare hands. The wire cut into my palms, but I didn't care. She whimpered, "Mommy," she said, "I was bad." My heart shattered. "She?" I asked, holding her tightly. "Mrs. Whitmore," she whispered. HOA Karen. I called 911. I called the police. I didn't care if I sounded hysterical. I was hysterical. Within minutes, the yard was filled with sirens and flashing lights. Officers took photos, statements, and one of them actually asked if this might be a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? That's when I lost it. I showed them the camera footage from our Ring doorbell. 10 minutes after I left, it captured Karen marching across the yard with a large roll of wire fencing and a set of keys. Lila dragged her out of her wheelchair and toward the back. And then the footage cut out. Someone had unplugged the camera, but what was already recorded was enough. The officer's tone changed. They took it seriously. Karen was brought in for questioning, but not arrested. Not yet. I stayed up all night with Lila, holding her as she sobbed, asking me if she did something wrong. I promised her, no, she did nothing wrong. But the worst wasn't over, because the next morning I got a letter from the accusing me of creating a hostile environment and demanding we appear at a hearing. The woman who caged my daughter was trying to turn the tables, and as I stood in my kitchen, gripping that letter, shaking with rage, there was a knock at the door. I opened it. And standing there was Karen. Smiling. With a lawyer. "Just wanted to deliver this personally," she said, handing me a restraining order, and that's when I realized she wasn't done with us yet. The paper trembled in my hand as I read the words, "Temporary restraining order, filed by Karen Whitmore." Claiming harassment, I almost laughed if I weren't so full of rage. This woman locked my disabled daughter in a backyard cage, and now she was trying to paint me as the threat. Leila sat beside me on the couch, bundled in a blanket, her eyes puffy from crying. She kept flinching every time someone walked by the window. My little girl, my brave, brilliant warrior, was afraid to even exist in her own home. And Karen, she was just 2 houses down, sipping lemonade on her porch like she was on vacation. She even waved at the news truck that pulled up around 9. That single quotes S right, the footage from my ring cam had gone viral overnight. HO monster locks disabled girl in cage. Neighbor from hell, suburban horror story, but Karen didn't look scared or sorry. She looked smug, untouchable. By noon, my phone hadn't stopped ringing. Reporters, advocates, even a lawyer from a victims' rights group offered to take the case for free. I accepted without hesitation. By 2 p.m., the police still hadn't arrested her. She's being investigated, they said. We have to follow due process. Due process? My daughter was locked up like an animal. But Karen got to walk around free because she lived in a zip code that made her seem respectable. I wasn't waiting anymore. I walked out to the street, shaking, holding a microphone handed to me by a local journalist. I told the world exactly what happened. I showed the bruises on Lila's arms. I described the cage, the padlock, the fear. And then I told them about the HOA letter. Instead of protecting us, the HOA is trying to shut us up, I said. Well, I won't be quiet. My daughter deserves justice. The crowd erupted in support. That's when Karen came outside again, this time in full purple, pantsuit, scarf, and sunglasses like she was somebody important. She marched right into the cameras. I will not be slandered by this woman. She said, she's just trying to defame me to distract from her own negligence. People gasped. She leaves that poor girl unattended all the time, Karen hissed. And now she's trying to make me the villain? I stepped toward her, but my lawyer stopped me. Don't give her the reaction she wants, she whispered. Karen smirked. See? Violent tendencies? My fists clenched. Karen, I said through gritted teeth, you laid hands on my child. You'll pay for that. She didn't even blink. You think you're the first person to try and ruin me? She said quietly, close to my ear. I am this neighborhood. Then she turned and walked away. By 5 p.m., my lawyer filed a countersuit. Attempted kidnapping, child endangerment, abuse of a disabled person. The judge set a hearing for the next day. But that night, something else happened, something worse. Lila woke up screaming. She said she saw someone in the backyard, wearing purple. Watching her from the trees, I ran outside with a flashlight, heart pounding, and there, in the dirt, was a fresh footprint, a woman's leading toward the side fence. Karen was stalking us. We called the police again. They filed a report, still no arrest. That night I barely slept. I held my daughter as she cried. I kept the lights on, the doors locked. Every creak, every shadow felt like danger. And then at 3:12 my phone lit up, a message. No name, no number, just 5 chilling words. You should have stayed quiet. I stared at the screen. You should have stayed quiet. My hands shook, my breath caught. There was no name, no number, just a threat, a promise. I checked the front door again, still locked. Windows secure. But in that moment, even the walls of my home didn't feel safe. Because now this wasn't just Karen trying to win a petty HOA battle. She was trying to scare me into silence. I called the police again. They filed a report, said they'd look into it. Same words. Same tone, but no urgency. No knock on Karen's door. No cruiser parked outside, just me, my daughter, and the creeping realization that we were on our own. The next morning, I dropped Lila off at her physical therapist's office across town somewhere. Karen couldn't reach her. I made sure she was safe. Then I went to the courthouse. It was time to face her. Karen was already inside when I arrived for the emergency hearing. Purple suit again, clipboard in hand. Like she thought she was at a garden club meeting, not standing trial for locking a disabled child in a cage. The judge looked weary, tired of the media, the pressure, the viral headlines. But he gave us both time to speak. Karen went first. Your Honor, she began, her voice honeyed with fake politeness. I was simply trying to prevent a dangerous situation. That little girl was unsupervised, rolling into other people's yards, damaging flowers, frightening pets. I stood up, boiling with fury. My daughter can't even walk without help. And you're saying she was some kind of threat? Karen didn't blink. She's unpredictable, she said coldly. We've had complaints. The judge raised an eyebrow. From whom? Karen faltered. Well, I don't have them. With me, of course not. Because they didn't exist. My turn came. I held nothing back. I showed photos. The video. I described the horror in my daughter's eyes. The scratch marks on her arms, the cruel padlock, the cage built like it was meant for an animal. She didn't just hurt my daughter, I said, voice shaking. She targeted her. Because she's disabled. Because she thought no one would believe us. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge seemed moved. He looked at Karen. And then he said, "You are to have no contact with this family until this matter is fully investigated. Do you understand?" Karen's jaw tightened. She said nothing, but I could feel it, her fury bubbling under the surface. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me. How does it feel to finally get some justice? Do you think Karen will be arrested soon? Is your daughter okay? I smiled weakly and nodded. She's strong, I said. Stronger than all of this. But just when I thought we were turning a corner, I got another call. It was from the school district. "Miss Harris, we have a situation," the voice said. "Someone just called Child Protective Services on you." I blinked. What? Why? "They claimed you're neglecting Lila, that you leave her alone for hours, that your home is unsafe." I couldn't believe it. Karen wasn't just trying to scare me anymore. She was trying to destroy me. That afternoon, a CPS worker knocked on my door. Lila clung to me, confused and scared as the woman walked through our home, taking notes, asking invasive questions. "I don't understand," Lila whispered. "Are they taking me away?" "No, baby," I said, hugging her tightly. "I won't let that happen." The CPS worker said she saw no signs of abuse or neglect, but she'd be filing a report anyway. Just procedure, she said, but I knew what it was. It was another war tactic. Another way Karen was trying to make our life unlivable, and that night, it escalated again. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the smell of smoke. I jumped out of bed, heart racing. I ran to the kitchen, nothing. Checked the outlets, nothing. Then I looked out the front window, and saw our wheelchair ramp was on fire. The wood crackled in the dark, flames climbing fast. I screamed. Grabbed the fire extinguisher. Called 911. Lila sobbed behind me when the firefighters came. They said it looked like it had been doused with lighter fluid. This wasn't an accident, it was arson. And I knew exactly who did it. But when the police questioned Karen the next day, she had an alibi, security footage from her own porch camera. Time-stamped. She was sitting outside, laughing, with a glass of wine, but something didn't add up. She was too calm. Too perfect, and then it hit me, what if she wasn't alone? What? If Karen wasn't working alone? What if Karen wasn't alone? That thought echoed through my mind like a drumbeat I couldn't silence. All this time, I had been focused on her, the face, the name, the cruelty, but what if there was someone else helping her? Lurking in the shadows, doing the dirty work while she smiled for her porch camera? The fire on the ramp hadn't started itself. The camera footage of her sipping wine might have been real, but it didn't mean she was innocent. It meant she was calculating, and someone close was helping her carry out every twisted move. The next morning, I pulled up the old HOA email threads. Every complaint, every warning, every time they threatened me for things that didn't make sense. Most of the emails had one signature. Greg Mallory, HOA Compliance Officer. Greg, mid-40s, stocky, pale, always wearing wraparound sunglasses. Like he was auditioning for a Secret Service role in a low-budget movie. He barely spoke, always walked behind Karen, took her orders. Nodded along. I remembered the way he glared at me when we first moved in. The way he scowled at Lila's therapy equipment. The way he once whispered something to Karen during a community meeting, and then she laughed, eyes locked on me. Something was off about him. And now I was sure. He was helping her, but I needed proof. I called my lawyer and asked her to help pull public records on Greg. Anything. Employment history. Criminal background. HOA filings. Anything that might expose a crack. Hours later, she called back. "Rachel, you're not going to believe this." Greg Mallory wasn't even officially employed by the HOA. He was Karen's personal friend, appointed by her the year before through a manipulated vote. No real credentials, no certification. Just a man with access and a disturbing record of complaints from former communities. Trespassing, intimidation. One even mentioned a property dispute where someone's dog mysteriously vanished, but somehow no charges ever stuck. He was her enforcer, and now I knew. I was being hunted by two monsters, not one. Later that evening, I received a text from an unknown number. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was a photo. It showed a blurry, nighttime image of Layla's wheelchair, sitting alone in the middle of a park near our neighborhood. She was nowhere in sight. I gasped. My heart stopped. And then another message appeared. She looked lonely. Thought we'd take her for a walk. I dropped the phone, sprinted to Layla's room. She was there. Safe. Sleeping. Her wheelchair was beside her bed. That photo. It wasn't real time. It was from the past. They were watching us. Following us? Cataloging our movements. I held Lila close the entire night, unable to sleep, praying for morning to come. The next day, I marched into the HOA office with my lawyer and a police escort. I demanded Karen and Greg be removed from any authority, pending criminal investigation. My voice didn't shake. Not this time. I had media attention, legal support, and most importantly, evidence. But then something unbelievable happened. Greg showed up at the office while we were there. He didn't know we'd be waiting, and under his arm, he was carrying blueprints. My lawyer grabbed them before he could hide them. They were plans for my backyard. Measurements, angles, property lines, notes. One note said, space behind shed, ideal for fencing. Keep camera blind spot in mind. Another said, wheelchair radius, check limitations. I could barely breathe. Greg turned pale as paper when he realized we saw them. The officer placed him under arrest on the spot. Karen's plan, her whole plan, just crumbled in that moment. But it wasn't over, because as they dragged Greg out, he looked at me, eyes wide, sweating, and said, you don't get it. She's not done yet. She said if it ever came down to this, she had a backup plan. And then, before they pushed him into the cruiser, he whispered something that froze me to my bones. She's already filed for emergency custody. I felt the world tilt beneath me. Karen was trying to take my daughter. My ears rang. My knees buckled. I had just heard the most terrifying words any mother could imagine. She's already filed for emergency custody. Karen, the woman who locked my disabled daughter in a cage, was now trying to legally take her from me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. But I knew one thing. I had to fight. I rushed home like the ground was on fire. Layla was on the couch, giggling softly at cartoons, unaware that her world was once again under threat. I hugged her too tightly. Mommy? She asked, concerned. Did something bad happen again? I smiled through the panic and said, not if I can help it, baby. I immediately called my lawyer. She was already one step ahead. She filed in family court, she said. Claimed you're unstable, neglectful. She even submitted statements from fake neighbors. Karen had crafted a story painting me as a mentally unfit, overburdened mother whose daughter would be better off in a more structured home. And somehow the court gave her an emergency hearing within 48 hours. She timed this perfectly, my lawyer muttered. She's trying to catch you before Greg's charges land in front of a judge. Because once he's convicted, everything falls apart for her. I felt like I was drowning. But I couldn't show fear, not in front of Lila. I smiled. I cooked her favorite meal. I tucked her in gently and kissed her forehead like I always did. But the moment her bedroom light turned off, I broke down. Why my daughter? Was it just because of the ramp? The therapy tools? The way we didn't fit the look of her perfect purple painted world? No, this was never about rules or lawns or neighborhood harmony. This was about control. Karen needed to feel like she had power. And the more she saw us stand tall, the more we refused to cower, the more dangerous she became. The next day, I met with the family advocate. We gathered every photo, every doctor's note, every therapist's letter describing how devoted, loving, and committed I was as a mother. We printed statements from Layla's school, our church, even the postman who'd watched her grow up. We were building a wall, one that no purple-suited tyrant could climb, but then came the blow I wasn't prepared for. A call from the courthouse. Karen had filed a video as evidence, one where I was crying, screaming at police the night Layla was found. In the cage, twisting my pain into mental instability. And worse, she claimed I staged the cage, that I coached Layla, that I was exploiting her for attention. The lies were so grotesque, so inhuman, that I started to doubt whether Karen was even capable of normal thought anymore. This wasn't HOA politics. This was warfare, but fate had something Karen didn't plan for the video she submitted. It backfired. Because in the background of that video, just faintly, you could hear a man's voice, and that voice was Greg's giving. Her instructions: wrap the wire tighter, don't leave gaps. She might wriggle out. Clear, chilling, caught on the mic, that video was her own confession. We sent it straight to the DEA, and suddenly everything changed. Karen was called in for questioning. This time she didn't walk out, she was detained. For witness tampering, filing a false CPS report, and conspiracy to commit child endangerment, but I still had to appear in family court. The emergency custody petition hadn't yet been withdrawn. I walked into that courtroom with fire in my chest. Karen wasn't there. Her lawyer represented her, but I looked the judge in the eye and said, "The woman trying to take my daughter away is in jail right now because she caged her like an animal. I may be tired. I may be traumatized, but I am not unstable. I am a mother. And I will burn this earth before I let anyone take her from me." Silence. Then the judge leaned forward. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. He stamped the petition denied, but as we walked out, my lawyer stopped me. "There's one more thing you need to know," she said cautiously. I looked at her, heart already in my throat, and then she said the words that made my blood run cold. "Karen made bail. She's out. And we don't know where she is. She was out. Karen had posted bail. The woman who locked my disabled daughter in a cage, who tried to burn our ramp, who filed for custody of a child she traumatized, was walking free. Again. My stomach twisted with fear. But I wasn't the same woman I was when this began. I wasn't scared. I was ready. That night I triple-locked every door. I had officers patrolling the street. Layla slept in my room, safe, sound, clutching her stuffed penguin while I stayed. Awake, listening to every sound outside, I told myself it was almost over. Just a little longer. Then at 3:47, the doorbell rang. Then again. Then 5 times in a row, I grabbed my phone, heart racing. Looked at the security app. And there she was. Karen. Standing on my porch in a soaking wet purple coat, mascara smeared, wild-eyed, like something out of a horror movie. She wasn't alone. She had a crowbar in her hand. I dialed 911 with one hand and grabbed my metal baseball bat with the other. But before I could even open the door, red and blue lights lit up the entire block. Sheriff's cruisers, backup, guns drawn. She dropped the crowbar immediately and raised her hands. They tackled her onto the front lawn, and as they cuffed her, she laughed. Actually laughed. I was just going to fix the ramp. She yelled, eyes wild. "Just wanted to help? You're all making a mistake." But there was no getting out of it this time. The charges were now stacked. Breaking and entering violation of a restraining order, attempted assault, and worst of all, child abuse. With intent to harm. Greg turned state's witness. He confessed everything, how Karen had plotted the whole scheme, how they watched my schedule, how they rehearsed what to say if they got caught. She thought her neighborhood power made her untouchable. But the moment she stepped foot on my porch with a weapon, she lost everything. The trial was swift. Every headline screamed her name. HOA president sentenced after child abuse scandal. The purple monster finally falls. Mom who fought back becomes local hero. Karen was sentenced to 22 years without parole. Greg got 12 for his part. The HOA board was dissolved, and new rules were passed statewide to protect families with disabled children from housing discrimination and abuse. As for me, I moved far away, to a quiet little home by a lake, where the air is clean and the only purple I see is in the sunset sky. Lila is healing. She's laughing again. She's learning to trust Dot, and every night before bed she asks me the same thing. Is she gone, Mommy? And every night I kiss her forehead and say, yes, baby, she's gone. And she's never coming back?